The first time an HOA president tried to hand me a pen and take my land, I almost laughed right in her face. Not because it was funny, but because sometimes the human brain needs a second to catch up when nonsense walks up your porch steps wearing pearls and acting official. She stood there in the morning heat with a clipboard, a smile pulled tight as barbed wire, and said, "Construction begins Monday. Sign here." That was it. No greeting, no explanation worth a dime, no proof she could point to that changed a single inch of what my family had owned for more than 70 years. I didn't sign. She left the clipboard on the porch anyway, clicked her pen shut like my answer was temporary, then walked back to her white SUV as if the conversation had already gone her way. You ever meet somebody so full of borrowed authority, they start acting like your silence is consent? That was Dorinda, former paralegal, HOA board president, and the kind of woman who treated a subdivision like her own little kingdom. My name is Garrett Wolfson. I was 58 when all this started. I got grease work so deep into my knuckles from 40 years of diesel work it might outlive me. I own 34 acres on the western edge of Calderwood Pines, Texas. Own, present tense, same as my father did, same as my grandfather before him. My grandfather cleared that land in the early 50s by hand. Cedar, rock, mesquite thick enough to tear your shirt open if you pushed through it wrong. He set the corner pins himself, filed the deed at the county office, and from that day on the land stayed ours. No mortgage, no easements, no HOA, just dirt, cattle, fence lines, and a paper trail older than most of the houses around me. That last part mattered more than anybody knew. Calderwood Pines had only been there about 12 years. Big developer came in, carved up the neighboring acreage, built nice homes, added rules, dues, committees, matching mailboxes, all the little rituals of organized suburban life. I never had a problem with the neighborhood. Most of the folks living there were decent people. But I never bought into it. My property sat there like an island of ranch land surrounded by deed restrictions, and for more than a decade, everybody managed to live with that. Then Dorinda got elected. The first time she came onto my property, she brought a document claiming the low corner on my southeast boundary was part of a community drainage easement. It had stamps on it, signatures, the whole costume of legitimacy. I looked at it for maybe 4 seconds, handed it back, and told her she might want to have a real lawyer check the county records before she made that drive again. She smiled like I was a child who miscounted, wrote something on her clipboard, and left. 3 weeks later, 2 excavators were sitting on my southeast corner at 7 in the morning. No permission, no warning worth calling real. Just diesel engines idling on my land like they belonged there. The foreman was a guy named Bryce, sunburned, polite, hard hat on, doing what he thought was honest work. He showed me the plan spread across his truck hood, community pool, county permit, approved survey, approved location. He believed every word of it. I asked one question. Did anybody pull the actual deed on this parcel before breaking ground? He blinked, then gave me the answer of a man who already knew he wasn't paid enough for that conversation. That's not my department. Fair enough. Bryce wasn't my enemy. I went back to the house, poured coffee hot enough to burn the tongue off a weaker man, and started making calls. First one was to my cousin Harlan, who spent 40 years working title records and could read a parcel history like other men read baseball scores. I gave him the permit number, the easement claim, my deed, all of it. 20 minutes later, he called back and said, "Buddy, they built on your land. Full stop." What happened was almost insulting in how small it looked on paper. 2 digits transposed on the permit application. Just a typo if you didn't know property law. But those 2 switch digits moved the construction zone about 90 feet, which was just enough to drag the so-called legal build site off HOA land and straight onto mine. That meant the permit wasn't just sloppy. It was void. No rights. No authority. Nothing. Now some folks, when they hear something like that, they march right back out there and start screaming. I get the urge. But years turning wrenches teaches you a thing or two. You don't tear into an engine before you document the failure. Once people know they're caught, evidence starts disappearing. So I documented everything. I walked the fence line with my phone rolling, slow and steady, narrating every stake, every machine track, every inch of disturbed soil. I borrowed a trail cam and pointed it at the site. Then I opened the fireproof lockbox I keep under my workbench in the barn. It smelled like oil and old paper, which, to me, smells like family. Inside were the deed, the probate papers, and the old survey from 1962, hand-drawn and faded, with my grandfather's initials marked near that very corner. I sent Dorinda a certified letter. Calm, factual, no drama. Construction on private property without consent. Immediate halt requested. Copies went to the county and the Attorney General's office. She ignored it. A few days later, I got 8 pages from the HOA's attorney claiming an implied easement by prior use, which was a fancy way of saying rainwater had once moved through that low patch. So now apparently they could build a $200,000 pool there. I stared at that letter at my kitchen table and actually said out loud, "Well, that's creative." Then I called Vera Ashcraft. If you've never met a truly dangerous real estate litigator, let me describe it for you. They're not loud. They don't posture. They just get quiet in a way that makes other people's bad decisions start having consequences. Vera was 5'4", drove an old pickup, and had the kind of mind that could skin a fraudulent argument down to bone in under 10 minutes. She read the HOA's claim and almost enjoyed herself. Told me implied easements in Texas were narrow as fence posts, and Dorinda's theory wouldn't survive daylight. So Vera sent back her own letter. Precise, surgical, nasty in the most professional way possible. Cease construction claims. Preserve all records. Produce the full permit history. Litigation hold in place. Dorinda's answer was to finish the pool. By June, the thing was open. Ribbon cutting. Photos. Smiling families. Blue water glittering like she created it herself. And 2 weeks after that, a bill showed up in my mailbox. That still makes me laugh. Even now, they build a pool on my land, then billed me for maintenance. Itemized, formal, complete with a line calling me an adjacent property owner benefiting from community infrastructure. I read it 3 times, just to make sure my brain wasn't skipping. Then I sent it to Vera. She called back inside an hour. "Garrett," she said, "the section they quoted only applies with written consent from the adjacent owner." Then she paused. "Which means this isn't just wrong. It's fraudulent." That was when the whole thing started cracking open. A retired schoolteacher named Phyllis, who lived near the pool and had been quietly sick of the HOA board for years, started feeding us information. One board member in particular, Carol Finn, had voted against the project, then resigned. Vera contacted her, and Carol met us at her kitchen table with a manila folder so well organized it could have taught classes. Carol had copies of internal records, amendment filings, meeting notes. And buried in there was the first real twist. The HOA had pushed through an amendment expanding its authority without the required member vote. Signed quietly, recorded quietly, never lawfully adopted, which meant the whole legal framework Dorinda kept leaning on. The easement claims, the billing, the service extension. Wasn't standing on anything solid. Then came the piece that changed this from a land fight into something uglier. Inside Carol's folder was a purchase agreement tied to a holding company set to buy the HOA's common amenities at a discount once the pool became fully operational. I looked at the paperwork, looked at the registered agent, and there was Dorinda's name. She wasn't just grabbing power because she liked control. She was building an asset with other people's money on stolen land, planning to end up owning it. That was the moment the room went cold. You know how sometimes you suspect a person is rotten, but seeing a whole design still knocks the air out of you? That was it. She hadn't overstepped. She'd engineered the whole thing. From there, everything moved fast. Vera filed the quiet title action. Criminal referral went to the district attorney. Discovery requests went out. A county investigator started pulling records. And then the real grenade landed. An email from Dorinda to the surveyor saying they needed that southeast corner included, and if they pulled the original pins and restaked it, the drainage argument would hold. Pulled the pins. My grandfather's iron survey pins, set decades ago, yanked out of the earth so she could fake a boundary. I felt rage in my life. This wasn't rage. It was colder than that. Cleaner. Like the click you hear in your head when something broken finally reveals exactly how it failed. A reporter picked up the story. Not the one Dorinda wanted. The real one. Suddenly, the local narrative about the difficult rancher trying to ruin summer for the kids turned into questions about fraud, reserve funds, fake amendments, stolen land, and self-dealing. Homeowners who trusted that board started realizing they'd been played too. Dorinda got desperate after that. She tried to smear me, tried to rattle my cattle broker, tried a countersuit, tried a settlement offer that included a demand I stop cooperating with the criminal side of the case. $25,000. Drop everything. Let her walk. I told the man who delivered it, no counter, just no. Then she tried one last move through a friendly county commissioner, looking for some emergency resolution to shield the pool as a public safety asset. That went nowhere. Too many people were watching by then. The hearing came in late April. Courtroom was packed. Homeowners in the gallery. Reporter with a notebook. County investigator in the back. Dorinda at the defense table wearing a burgundy blazer and the look of a woman trying very hard not to understand what was happening. Vera laid out piece by piece. Deed chain, surveys, title history, void permit, fraudulent amendment, surveyor statement, internal email. The HOA attorney argued community benefit and fairness, and implied rights, and every other pretty phrase you use when the facts are ugly. Judge Doris Wayfrow listened, asked a few questions, then ruled from bench. Clear fee simple title to the parcel belonged to me. The permit was void. The amendment was void. The HOA had no valid easement. The pool, all improvements included, sat on Garrett Wolfson's land. I won't pretend I felt some big movie moment. No swelling music. No fist pump. Mostly I felt the weight finally leave my chest. Behind me, the room let out one long breath all at once. By 2 that afternoon, Cliff Drowsky had his pump truck backed up to the pool deck. Cliff's been my friend 30 years. Septic and excavation man, reliable as sunrise, and the kind of person who repays a favor in full. We pulled the drain covers together. He fired up the pump. And let me tell you, the sound of 21,000 gallons leaving a swimming pool is a beautiful thing when justice is on the hose. It started as a deep gulping at the bottom, then became a hard rushing thrum through the lines. Hour after hour, load after load, the water dropped. Chlorine smell gave way to wet concrete, stone, and the sour little scent of something expensive losing all its shine. By 7 that evening, the pool was an empty shell. Next morning, we bolted a commercial livestock waterer into shallow end, tied it into my well line, strung a simple electric wire along the coping, and opened the gate. 6 Herefords walked in, looked around like none of this had anything to do with them, and lowered their heads to drink. That sound, cattle drinking slow and steady out of former neighborhood showpiece, echoed off those pool walls under the pergola Dorinda had decorated for her ribbon cutting. I stood there in my work shirt, boots dusty, watching 6 cows enjoy the most expensive water trough in Texas. And I'll admit it, that was the first moment I truly smiled. After that, the rest came the way it always does when the paperwork is real and the lies aren't. Dorinda got removed from the board. Criminal charges followed. The developer paid. The surveyor lost his license. The HOA clawed money back through insurance, cleaned house, and turned a chunk of what was recovered into scholarships for local kids. Carol took over interim leadership. Phyllis, God bless her, baked a sheet cake with blue frosting and a hoof print on it. As for me, I stayed home. The pool shell is still there. Cost too much to tear out, and the cattle like the shade. One October weekend, I poured a narrow strip of concrete along the edge and pressed in a few boot prints and hoof prints before it dried. Up in one corner, I stamped my grandfather's initials. EW, not as a victory lap, just a reminder. Land remembers who stands on it, even when people try very hard to make it forget. And that's the thing I learned in all this. Power talks big when it thinks you don't know your own ground. It leans on paper, titles, meetings, fake certainty, and the hope that you'll get tired before the truth gets organized. But if you stay calm, keep records, and know exactly what's yours, the bluff starts to shake. Then it falls. So tell me this. If somebody builds something beautiful with stolen ground, stolen money, and a smile on their face, what matters more? The good it does to the crowd, or the lie it was built on in the first place? I want to hear what you think. Was draining that pool into a cattle setup justice, revenge, or both? And if you've ever dealt with an HOA, a property fight, or somebody in power who thought you'd fold, share your story too.